Yeah, what I'll keep on here.
Yay! Okay, we are live. It's so great to have you here, Boris.
It's great to be here.
So I think you were just out and about in San Francisco, and now you've come here to talk with us. I just love the miracle of this technology, I'll tell you.
I do too. Of course, I practiced before I went out.
That's true. That's true. We practiced earlier, like good harpists, right? We came prepared. So yeah. And I think let's give a little background about how we met. Because we are lucky enough to live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and in San Francisco, we have just a plethora of harpists. I mean, I actually did not realize until I started traveling further out in the harp communities how lucky we are.
Oh my God, let me tell you. But that is a plus and a minus, right? Psychologically. I moved here from New York because I kind of evolved into this community here. Started a week at a time every 6, and then it got more frequent until I just said, I have to live here. So I thought, moving here from New York, I'm going to be top of the heap. I don't know any other harpist in San Francisco. Okay, I'm here for 6 months, and Mike Lewis moves to San Francisco, the technician from my harps. And I said, Mike Lewis, why did you move to San Francisco? He said, because there are statistically more harpists per capita in the Bay Area than anywhere else in the country, if not the world. And I went, oh my God.
What have I done?
Oh my goodness. But anyway, I worked that out. I made a non-competition clause with myself.
Yes.
Because each of us are equally essential.
Okay. So I don't know what happened to my camera. Yeah, but I think I'm back in. So let's see if we can get Boris back on. So hey, okay, we have Laurie, we have Diane from Idaho. We have hey, we're back. I don't know what happened there. Every time something new happens, you know what happened last time? Brian set off the fire alarm. So people, maybe they're wondering, what's the difference between a Facebook Live and Virtual Harp Summit? We edit out all the fire alarms and when the computer crashes, such as right now. That's one difference. So actually, we've got a whole bunch of people in here, Boris. This is fun. We have Lane from Western New York. Kemp is in from New Zealand. Wow. We have Diane from Nampa, Idaho. Laurie from Spokane, Washington. Nancy from New Hampshire. Oh, tons of people. Gloria from San Pedro, California. Anita from Ohio. Hello. Beth Golay is on. Hello from Seattle. Oh, Beth Golay. Yeah, Bonnie is from Halifax, Nova Scotia. Superb. And Joni, you wrote a beautiful long post. I will come back and take a look. Oh, your story about learning the harp. How wonderful. We have Emma, very late here in the UK. So I'll probably catch up with this one as well later. Yeah, that's true. You know, you can actually come in and watch this later. So we are running live. Now, the benefit of running live is you get to watch us set off smoke alarms and things like that. And also you can ask us questions. So Elizabeth from New Zealand, Jenny, hey, from Sydney, Australia. Andalyn, that's a beautiful name, from Idaho. And Kemp is admiring your harp. Brian, my partner, is saying, Brian from your kitchen. Hello. He's from my kitchen. Masayo, hello. And then Wendelin, hey, Fairfax, California. Okay, everybody, it's just great to have you all pouring in here. Now, I'm super excited for you to meet Boris if you haven't met him before. He is one of the most on-purpose harpists that I know, or on-purpose people, I would say. Yeah, I mean, you've really affected me in many ways, I would say.
I love your work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Boris. So many of you know that I have a system. I call it the Bright Knowledge System. And it's got these 5 steps that we go through in a linear process for being creative and actually manifesting our creativity. And the very first step is finding your true heart purpose. So, Boris, I want to talk to you about that first step together. Because without knowing what your purpose is, then, you know, I feel like we will oftentimes first just create a practice plan with no purpose to it. And if there's no purpose, you know, we're creating a lot of planned things that aren't terribly exciting or pertinent. They're usually someone else's agenda. And then the next thing you know is we're trying to set goals from that practice plan, and everything is backwards. What I see is we have to actually start with our purpose, and from our purpose, then we create goals, and then we would create a practice plan. But that's kind of a long story. I say let's stay with our true heart purpose today. And I was thinking about 3 ways that we could look at that together today. So does that sound like fun?
It sounds like fun to me.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear how you originally got inspired to take up the harp, because it's almost always an unusual story because it's such an unusual instrument.
Well, I wanted to play harp when I was a teenager. And actually when I was a child, but a harp cost about the same amount as my parents' house. And the flutophone hadn't worked out, nor had the guitar or clarinet. So my parents were skeptical about the prospect of, you know, mortgaging the house for a maybe it'll work out situation. So anyway, I didn't get near a harp until I was 18. And then I was told I was too old by the head of the harp department of the conservatory in Cincinnati, actually. And so I was a dancer at that point, an actor, and I was employed. So, hey, I stayed that way and was happy to be an artist. And my career progressed as an artist, and I toured in Godspell Hair, Superstar Tommy as an actor, singer, dancer. I was a choreographer, artist in residence as a choreographer at University of Maryland. Had a revelation on a bus, became artist in residence in a regional transit authority, and got $500,000 in grants. I was 21, and to do performance art on buses. It was an idea I had, and I raised the money and did that. And then I started a commission on the arts for the city of Cincinnati. The city manager asked me to do that. And it was the first non-arts thing I had done, and I did it anyway. And I gave the good upside was I raised $3.8 million to give to other artists in grants of $10,000 each. And the downside was, and it was also an upside, was I learned about politics oh my heavens, politics are like water and oil. We don't really mix on one hand. On the other hand, I realize the only time I'm not being political is when I'm alone in the room. And you know me, I can even. I felt I did that job for a period of time, and I resigned, and I said, and I started a company in New York with two friends who were starving artists, but they wrote music like crazy. I incorporated as a company with them, and we became a jingle house. And they, I think we won the Coca-Cola Super Bowl commercial several years in a row, which paid for our bills, etc. But I really wanted to. The harp was a burning desire, and I'll tell you. But no one would teach me. They all said I was too old. Now I was 23 instead of 18 when I was old. Now I was super old.
What a myth. What a myth that is.
And I ran into Mildred Dilling in New York City. Mildred
Dilling, a legend. Teacher of Harper Marx, I believe.
Harper Marx, they were associated for 35 years.
Yeah.
And she also, other notable students, Suzanne McDonald, Nancy Allen. I mean, there's a long line of people who've crossed paths with Mildred Dilling.
Such a legend.
But I told her my tale of woe. I said, God, if I'd only met you when I was a child, I'd be a harpist today. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, dear, you know, if you'll stop having an age, there'll be two advantages. One, I'll take you as a student. And the second thing is you'll never again be too old or too young to do anything ever again. So
beautiful. There's one of the things you influenced me on, and I stopped believing in age after you told me this story.
I didn't turn 24.
Oh, and yeah, I mean, take a look at some of these comments. Ned is saying I was 52 when he started.
Ned. Bravo.
Kathy, I started harp at 58, never too late. That's right.
Brilliant.
And then
wonderful, Kathy. And
Emma, she started at 18 after a revelation on a bus. We get back to the bus and harp thing.
Let's talk, Emma. We'll communicate inside. Buses and I love public transportation. But what happened? So I cashed in my retirement account. Here's the deal. When you talk purpose, I felt politically impotent at the time. I felt like, after being involved on the city government level and seeing how people influence votes and what the city government did based on really how much money they had or how big a business they had. And plus an administration came into the presidency that I was very opposed to, much like today. And
we don't hold back here.
But I felt like I didn't have any power. I felt like I had no influence. But I felt Mildred taking me as a student, that if I locked myself in a room and no one even heard me, at least I was contributing to the positive vibrations of the world. I mean, what I was doing was an antidote. It was the opposite of the political administration that I just disagreed with, and also with anything I disagreed with. And in fact, it made everything agreeable, just being a positive vibration. Putting out beauty and harmony became I felt like that was my political thing. And I would be a political antidote to everything.
Yeah.
Okay, I took my harp out in front of my loft in New York City at Broome and Thompson Streets, and I played the 5 songs I memorized from Mildred Dilling's classics for the harp. And I played them over and over, and I made $50 an hour in my first hour on the street. Because your friends will tell you they like it in your house. I mean, you insult your host, but on the streets of New York, they'll just say, "Go home," or And I liked it. Well, so the second day I went out, I got an offer. A marketing director I had kind of a big crowd on the street for my 5 songs, and the marketing director for Barnes and Noble bookstores said that they were starting a concert series for children in New York libraries, and they'd like to hire me to play 5 concerts. And I went, I know 5 songs. So they were far enough in the future that I could learn more. And I did my first one at the music library at Lincoln Center, and oh my gosh, I was sweating bullets.
What a way to start. But I think when you're so in your purpose, you attract an energy to you that's so positive.
Talk about attracting. I'll be honest. I was very distressed by the policies of the Reagan administration. So proof of voila, 3 years later, who do I get called to play for? The First Lady.
Wow.
I mean, so there I'm playing. I mean, I'm playing harp 3 years. My goal was to be the opposite of this.
Wow.
I'm going to be in the same room with the First Lady playing harp. And then I get called to play for every president. I've played for every president since.
Yeah.
Except for the first George Bush. And that's kind of a crazy thing, isn't it? I mean, my goal was to make my politics, to be political by expressing harmony. That
I love this.
I want you to know, not one of those presidents asked my opinion about policy, and that I'm fine with that. I got to put harmony into their life.
Right. And I think when you are doing that, you're coming from your place of purpose. You're communicating so much more than we can by words. I mean, I think a lot of why we're attracted to the harp is because it's a massive communicator, super fast. And so then you are actually saying your beliefs.
I'm startled sometimes because I think my opportunities have exceeded my competence. I mean, I look at Mildred Dilling told me two things, and I do want to give a plug for the Harp Society because it's a great thing. I went to my first thing 2 years ago. And the reason I never attended, my harp teacher, Mildred Dilling, was one of the founders of the American Harp Society.
American Harp Society, yeah. And so there are many chapters all over the United States.
She and Carlos Salcedo and Marcel Grandjeannet.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mildred forbid me to attend any of the meetings. She said, because you'll compare yourself to anybody else. And I'm glad she told me that because I never would have played publicly had I heard this. I mean, just around me. I went, oh my gosh, I'm such an amateur compared to everybody. I mean, to many people I know. And yet here I am playing for the president, the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of Kazakhstan. And it's interesting because my purpose led to the unfoldment of opportunity as opposed to I was committed to my pieces. I mean, I was prepared. I knew my pieces. And Mildred said, your repertoire might be simpler than others, but it feels like you're doing it because you like the music and not because you're struggling with it. And I went, well, that's good.
That's enormous. That's such an enormous tip for people because I think people agonize about, I want to play more and more complicated pieces, but actually playing something simple with absolute intention is hugely powerful.
Well, it's, I was. Yeah.
So in our 3 ways to reconnect with your purpose, I actually want to just go ahead and jump to number 2 because that's what we're talking about. Have a specific, compelling purpose or a mission in many ways. And if we have that, if we have a very specific and compelling purpose, then I think that can drive us through to so many achievements, not only having a better practice, but, attracting these incredible, what look like coincidences. But I mean, I've seen your life, Boris. I don't think they're coincidences because they keep happening. So you're doing something,
I mean, my business, I've had, as an artist, the best place I've ever been an artist was the bus company in Cincinnati. I walked in off the street and said I had a revelation about Here and Now on a bus when I was leaving being artist in residence as a performance artist choreographer at the University of Maryland, left on a Greyhound bus 6 o'clock in the morning, had this revelation, and decided I want to commemorate it with performance pieces at bus stops and on buses. So I walked into the transit system in Cincinnati, and it was the Queen City Metro, and they had a mission statement, a purpose, which was to improve the quality of urban lifestyle by improving personal mobility. And my idea for doing art on and around the buses met their goal of improving urban lifestyle. And so they said, if you can raise the money, and to pay yourself and the whole thing, and happily, I did. Who knew I could do that? But right ideas, I now know, attract what they need to keep going. And purpose That's why purpose associated with harp. Don't play harp to make money. Play harp to bless mankind, and you will see money come to you. You know,
Right.
the best you can. You don't even have to have the intention. I mean, doing the best you can takes all mankind forward.
Yes. Thank you.
I mean, when I practice, I'm practicing for everybody. When you're practicing for everybody.
Yeah.
And because it takes us all forward. We're one
Yes.
together. Anyway, and you get, you're supplied with what you need to keep doing that. That's my experience so far. But I made a statement this recent, because it's not just political. I just said I wanted to play harp to bless mankind. I mean, I'm in the blessing business. And that to me, that means to be filled with joy. Okay. To be joyous.
Yeah. I'm just going to show this again, just to remind people. I mean, that's such a beautiful purpose, to bless mankind.
Well, I have spent a time recently being overcome with negative political posts on Facebook. And I've had to kind of separate myself from that a little bit and pull back. And, because it just came to me the other day, what am I going to do? What am I supposed to do? And she said, you play the harp, Maroon. I mean, that's what I do. That's what I've done. It's kept rent paid. It's kept that, it's so, duh.
And so that makes it so much more compelling to practice, right? It keeps you on track, and practice is not a drudgery, because you are engaged with this purpose of blessing. And that's way more exciting than, well, I need to do these exercises and these arpeggios and memorize this song. Those are facts and those are all good. But without the purpose to drive us forward, we're not going to remain motivated and joyful.
Well, plus the harp is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And watching who doesn't agree. I mean, it's intoxicating. It's thrilling.
Staying in touch with that, reminds me of the very first thing that I was planning on talking about, but we jumped into this other beautiful thing, and I was like, great, we go with that. I find one of the very most powerful ways for people to reignite their passion for the harp and to identify their purpose is to remember why they started harp in the first place. And, when you're saying, it's just this gorgeous, intoxicating sound, remembering that will bring us to the harp. It will keep us creative. We get used to what we're doing, even if it is harp. We can kind of make it run of the mill. I've even heard the term, from professional harpists, like as time goes on, you see the harp as a cash register. You forget.
That's where I was at.
Okay. How did you get past that?
Well, for 25, I had this great job. I mean, in New York with the company I was a principal in, I did very well. And Andy Warhol asked me to come and be an executive producer for him. So I did. And it was demanding, and I was living the life and had a driver and a limousine and a house in the country. And I was miserable. And there was the harp sitting in my house in the country, and I would when I played that, I was like, everything was okay. And I said, I got up one day and resigned being secretary treasurer for a company that I started and being an executive producer and vice president of one of India's financial holding companies, and loaded my harp and my futon and my clothes and my favorite vacuum cleaner.
Got your priorities right.
To drive to San Francisco and be a harpist. And the reason San Francisco, the company I was principal, and we gave a grant to the Fine Arts Museum in San Francisco to produce a play with hearing and deaf actors on the same stage. And a friend of ours wrote the play, and one of my colleagues and the principals in this company wrote the music. And it was orchestrated and included harp, me as a harpist, and strings and things that would resonate. So non-hearing audience members would feel the music. And the play was both signed and, the actors on stage signed everything as well as speaking or singing it. So there were deaf actors who just sang with sign language, and and they sang in. But anyway, the way we call it was exciting and wonderful. But people knew me as a harpist in San Francisco, so sliding in here as a harpist was a new and a natural thing, and terrifying, absolutely terrifying. I mean, I quit my job. I was going, and I got halfway across. Well, I got to Cincinnati, where I'm from, and collapsed and was hospitalized and told I was going to die. And after being there 10 days, I was told I was going to die within 2 weeks from two dreadful diseases, which are known, and one unknown disease. I mean, it only takes one terminal illness to kill you, and I had 3. And
Yeah.
I mean, that was a humbling experience. I was told I was in solitary confinement in the hospital because they didn't know this one thing. Anybody who came to visit me had a mask on. And so anyway, with this dreadful prognosis, my harp teacher was a Christian Scientist, Mildred Dillon, and that was the idea of not having an age. Well, I was a very adamant atheist, and I said, "But what have I got to lose? I'm going to call Christian Science practitioner. Worst thing happens, I drop dead in 2 weeks." So I called. Anyway, I'm being very frank, aren't I? So anyway, I called. My woman who became my friend, Lillian Schwab, in New York City. She was my neighbor. She heard me play harp in front of my apartment one day, and that's how I met her. And I called her, and I told her I was dying, and she said, "What are the symptoms?" I said, "Well, I have this 102 fever that won't go away for 10 days." And she said, "Well, that sounds like you're afraid of something. What could it be?" And I said, "Death by embarrassment on a street corner with a harp and a shopping bag in San Francisco." She said, "Oh dear, you don't get supply, you are supply." That was earth-shaking, because my concept is you work, you just work until you can't work anymore, and then if you're good, somebody will give you cash, right? But she said, "No, you are supply, and it wouldn't have occurred to you to quit these positions that you had and to commit yourself to making harmonious beauty and broadcasting it into the world unless there was a pre-existing demand for it." And since then, through experience, I've evolved that concept a little more, that we are essential parts of an ecosystem. And we're like the stabilizers. Harpists are major stabilizers in reality. We create harmony, and there is an urgent demand for it right now on Earth. I mean, if you can turn on any broadcast media with news on it and think you're not essential, slap yourself.
Harpist, you're on notice. Slap yourself. You're needed.
You're needed
now.
That idea made sense to me. It was a 3-minute conversation. I got off the phone. Next time they came in, my temperature was normal. And the other 2 things, I called, it wasn't anything I expected from this interaction with the Christian Science practitioner. It was really about understanding how I got myself in this bizarre position of dying, and it was and most of it was about fears around the harp. And it just made sense to me that my purpose, all of our purpose, each of us who are tuned into this today have a purpose behind our playing harp. We do. If you might not have expressed it yet, but you do. And it's valid. It's important. You haven't been led to the harp just because it's something, a way to spend your afternoons.
Right.
It is it's a pulsing, essential part of life on Earth. And it's one of the elements that can keep it together, harmony. Think about it.
Yes.
Everything
is waves, the more they discover, the more they find out it's about waves.
It's a superpower.
It really is.
Creating frequencies and having the capacity for that is a superpower.
It is. Harpists, it's a superpower. I love this. What you're reminding me of is this third aspect of finding your purpose, which for me is growing your self-trust, which is very connected to commitment, which we'll talk about in a second. But, when you were talking about this incredible recovery you had from illnesses that were considered terminal, you had to confront yourself in a way that you had to grow your trust in yourself. You had to trust.
Or die.
Right? Actually, the stakes couldn't have been higher for you. So maybe that's why you're such a good practitioner.
Would I have done it without that? Probably not. Obviously not that.
Yes.
my custom-made curriculum. And we all have our custom-made curriculum. Every single person who's playing harp today has as an interesting a story as mine. Every single person tuned in today has as compelling an experience that brought them to the instrument. You know? And it's exciting. I'm excited just to get started today. Because that was the one thing. For 25 years, I locked myself in a room, basically, got up at 5, tuned the harp, played until, the only time I didn't talk to anybody. I said hello. I have to tell you what happened when I left the hospital. I had a wonderful recovery. I was completely recovered from all of the symptoms in 24 hours from all 3 illnesses.
And these are major, major illnesses at the time. Yeah.
Even now, they'd be major. And I got on a plane. My brother drove my harp the rest of the way to California. I flew to California. I went to my friend's loft on 9th Street, knocked on the door. And, I'm here. And he opened the door and said, first thing he said was, I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of booking you for a job. I got a call from the Fairmont Hotel, and they asked for a harpist, and I just took the liberty of booking you. And from that day to this day, I promise you, I have never asked for a job, and I have been continuously employed. It got so dense that I fell away from Purpose, and now I have to say, you're asking me about this and getting involved is kind of a perfectly, part of my perfect curriculum, of my life curriculum, because it can be tuned into that and getting me enthused about playing. Because I got so densely, I didn't have human relationships, no time. And besides, everybody I'd been playing, everyone who was working in San Francisco, we're talking Natalie Cox, who's a genius. And later on, Laura Simpson moved to town, and she's a genius. All these, Sarah Voyna, yourself. Like Mike Lewis said, this is the densest populated per capita city for harpists. And I felt like I had to really work to be worth being paid. And I really never heard any other harpists play except for my harp teacher, and I had her records, and then I had other records of Dwayne Fulton was a friend from LA, and he was a big influence on me because he was working every day in a restaurant. I thought that would be a good way to pay the rent, and lo and behold, the Ritz-Carlton came to me and wanted me to play there 7 days a week, and I was harpist at the Navy on Treasure Island at the same time, and I was in 15 ensembles.
Wow!
I played, practiced from 5 until, actually I got up at 5, swam for an hour, read my metaphysical studies for an hour. And it seemed like an obvious thing to do to read a little bit more about Christian Science, which I did. And I'm grateful for that. And so then I do that discipline. I'd swim for an hour, then play harp until, lunch. Then I'd practice for another hour, and then I'd go play tea for 3 hours. Then I had an hour off, and I'd play 4 hours for dinner. And on Sunday, it was tea and brunch, a 3-hour brunch for the Navy in the morning, and then tea at the Ritz. And so it was 7 hours, a minimum of 7 hours performing a day, 7 days a week. And in that, I negotiated a day off, which is the 14th of every month, and I have a salon every month where all my friends come over, and one's tomorrow, and then you're coming.
Yes, I am.
Sarah Voyna was playing a little commercial. Yes. I love Sarah Voyna, goddess of the harp.
Great jazz harpist.
Yeah, jazz harp. She's doing
amongst other repertoire as well, of course.
Doing psychedelic funk. If you want to know more about that and you're in the Bay Area, text me on Facebook and I'll send you the details. But anyway, I'm sorry.
Well, actually, now that you mention it, how can people contact you?
Right here through Facebook, right? This is on Facebook.
This is on Facebook, so look up Boris Goldmund. And
we're not friends already, and just write me direct.
Cool. And then there's also your website, borisgoldmund.com.
Yeah, I haven't updated since.
Due for an update, but you can reach Boris there too.
December of last year. I've got 10 CDs on iTunes, so you can check those things out. And if you can't afford that, call me and I'll send you something. But anyway, I burnt out on it all after not having any relationships. In the last 6 years, I've had a relationship, and it's really fun having a relationship. And I had a dog, and I stopped working all those jobs and started, hiring every other harpist I knew to take the jobs that were sent to me. And now I realize I really want to start taking jobs again. I would take, certain jobs and clients who wanted, but I felt less and less confident about it. And I'll tell you the two reasons. One, I wasn't devoting, 5 or 6 hours of practice a day. And two, I came attached to my purpose. It was a cash register rather than the antidote. But I came recently to the conclusion that, this is, again, a life or death situation for mankind. There's too many issues for me to be sitting around thinking about making money. It's about lifting myself and everybody around me with harp music and whatever else I can do. But harp music is the thing I do. So, I started playing with an Asian fusion group again. Oh, I have a fusion group. It's a improv group. I started with, I was at a club, saw a group called Fuzz Factor, and they had a giant double marimba. Nora Balaban and Shalonda Smith were playing it, and with Joe Gore, who's famous bass player. They're famous musicians. And I walked up to them on stage afterwards and begged them to let me come to one of the rehearsals and see if harp worked. And they said, okay. I ended up playing with them for years, and that evolved into who doesn't like to rehearse, so we became all improv. I'll do this as long as I don't have to rehearse. I said, so we're defining, the parameters. And so is harp, cello, Joseph Aver, who's cellist in the Oakland Symphony, and Michael Chevrolet, a percussionist. And we did a CD, an album called Shojobo. At my salon, I was jamming with a person I never met before, tabla player, bass player Scott Drangson, who lives in Oakland, and Shalonda on marimba. And 2 days later, I get a call from Stevie Wonder's. A group of people producing an event with Stevie Wonder said, Stevie heard a tape of your music with tabla and harp and bass and marimba and thought he'd really like you to open for him at the Plaza in New York. And I said, who is this really? I didn't even know the tabla player. It's Jim Owen, who now is the director of the International Music Festival in San Francisco. He's genius, great artist. And I had to find him. I didn't even know his name. I had to find out who brought him. We tracked him down. We did this concert. Things, when you're committed, things happen. And when you have purpose, things happen. And I'm glad you're getting me reconnected with purpose, because I just know things are happening because of it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So actually, I have a little workbook for everybody. Let me type in. I wonder if I can type in here where you can download it. Harpcircleworkbook.com.
Cool, Harpcircle. Let me write that down.
Let me show that. See if I can show it. Harpcircleworkbook.com. Yes, no typos. Great. Okay, so when you download this workbook, you'll get to see about this 5-step system that we're talking about. And with Boris, we're talking about step number 1, ground zero. This is it. You've got to begin with your purpose. So on page 3 of the workbook, you'll see an overview. Which way does it go? It goes the opposite way. An overview of the entire system. And then when you go through the workbook, you're going to go to page number 6. Page number 6 talks about defining your purpose, finding your harp purpose. And so there's just some questions that you would answer here for yourself. So you can download this, you can fill it in on your computer, or you could fill it in by hand. To tell you the truth, I recommend by hand, because when we do something, when we write things, the kinetic memory starts coming in and it embeds a lot more deeply for you. So I know it's very convenient to fill out a form online, but if possible, try to do this by hand. And this will start getting you thinking about your purpose and ways to really reconnect with it, which is what we're talking about today.
Something that Mildred Dilling said to me at one of my first lessons was that, in terms of purpose, that because, obviously we're all intoxicated by the activity of playing the harp. Tactually, vibrationally, frequency-wise. It's exciting. She said, but it really has no purpose until it hits the auditory nerve. I mean, you're sharing, you're putting it out there. You're doing it. Your purpose in doing this, when it hits the auditory nerve, it changes people's lives. I mean, and when you add the idea that you're consciously improving the universe, the world in which we live, by doing it, your immediate environment, your neighborhood, your city, your state, your country, the world. Even if it's just your neighbor hearing through the wall or down the street. I mean, besides our enjoying it, I mean, and there's goodness in that too, enjoying something. That takes us forward. But I think Mildred saying that really was an important thing for me. That it's really important, because I was telling her, even if nobody hears me, she said, no, dear. She said it's important that it gets its meaning when it hits the auditory nerve. And I thought, oh.
Yeah, and it may even do that almost in an esoteric way. Someone's hearing it and you don't know they're hearing it, or at least you're just putting that intention out into the universe. It makes a difference versus not playing.
What is helpful about being fearful of audiences, people want the harp. They want to hear you playing the harp. Everybody on here, I mean, how often do you get to hear a harp? Well,
for us every day. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It's enchantment.
Which is especially, I think, why harpists have to reconnect to their purpose, because even though, as I said before, it is so enchanting, you can get used to it and kind of forget what your purpose is. So, when Mildred was telling you, about having this very, specific, compelling purpose, this is a very, very powerful thing. So I would invite people, think about what your purpose is, and it has to be something compelling and something, so it has like an emotional punch. Your purpose can't be just, I want to play better, or I want to play more accurately. I want to play faster. I want to play these.
You got to include all those. You got to include all those.
But those can be part of your goals.
They're like objectives within the goal.
Exactly. But the overarching purpose, that is what will even influence what your goals are.
I have to tell you, I have a friend who's a genius, Charles Moselle. You performed with him. He and I have an album called Wiggle. You can hear it on iTunes. But check it out, because he's amazing. But he has, on a crowdsource funding thing, one of the people from the Rolling Stones took him to Greece last year and they played for refugees who've just put their lives on the line, escaping Syria to get to Greece, and they were playing mud floors, so tense with rain coming down, but playing music. And the music was, he said it was the first time he really grasped his purpose in music, was serving other people, and serving in such a way that he could see that it gave hope. And he got, he was teaching children from Syria who didn't have a word in common with beatboxing, so that they could make percussion and they did traditional folk songs over beatboxing that the kids could. I mean, and it so changed his life, this week that he spent there, that he came back and went on a crowdfunding page and raised money and went back there. And he just came back, and he was empowered by his purpose. And I mean, this is someone who's been a musician for decades, and greats of all around the world. I mean, he's great.
And he got reinvigorated from reconnecting to that purpose.
Yeah, so exciting. Yeah. Looks like you're frozen. No sound. No.
Really? I can see, but I think
nobody can hear us.
I think it might just be Alex, because I can see us moving around. Let me double check with Jillian, my wonderful tech person. So anyway, while I'm checking on that, I was wondering if anybody has any questions for us, especially for Boris, because this is your chance to commune with this amazing guy.
And I with you. And I with all.
So let me just ask Jillian, make sure she can see us. Okay. And if anybody has, Kathy says sound and vision is fine. Yeah, it's usually if it's moving here, it is actually moving, but sometimes on people's individual computers, things will freeze. So yeah, people, now is your chance to ask any questions about purpose. And then of course, Boris has a million interesting things going on. So it's always cool to find out we've done a lot of work together with improvisation. I mean, that's something I would love to talk to you about, but we'll do that another time. Because actually you were very important in helping me get used to improvisation. I came from a very classical background, and I was very glued to the page. But that's another long story. We got to stay on.
I know my part, right? I mean, it's every time you walk out, what's it going to be today?
Yeah,
I love doing that. I just started playing with someone who we don't even speak the same language. She's Chinese. Her name's and she's a brilliant. I mean, she went to the Shanghai Conservatory, plays guzhong, which is a type of. It has a bridge, so it's not a harp.
Yeah, I call it a harp. I mean, so it's like a sideways harp, but yeah, technically it's a zither.
It looks like a koto. I mean, it's like a koto Chinese, but it's an event. And with cajon, harp, guzhong, and bass, and it's really fun. I mean, but she and I speak not a word in common below.
Besides music.
And we're starting. I'm playing to Chinese pieces, which I love doing. I love the pentatonic scale of that music. Written pieces that she says, but I've started getting us into improv, which is really, terrifying. Love it. And I went to the subway with them, and it was fantastic. And I realized this is so great to play in the subway. I haven't played on the street for since I started harp, and again, kind of fun. And there's a purpose. It makes living in San Francisco better when you play in a public place, because people don't give as much money on the streets in San Francisco as they do in New York. Oh my gosh.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Oh, San Francisco, step it up. So Beth Colley is asking, are you teaching students as well as all your other harp activities?
I have had students. I currently don't have. I don't have any students presently. I gave a lesson in Berlin recently to my niece who's 6, and I have a harpsichord, travel harp, the full sickle harpsichord, 26 string, and with the stand. And I gave her a lesson, and she was so into it. I gave her the harp, and she's
really
she's having lessons now with Victor Harkenbauer in Berlin, who's a genius harpist who. I'll probably have as a friend in common as a harpist, a renowned harpist in Europe. And so she's having her anyway, she's way into it. So I'm excited.
So you do. Yeah. So, okay, well, let's do a little recap on these 3 ways to find your true harp purpose, because, finding your purpose is such a massive topic. I think it's important to try and get a few specific things we can hold on to get started. For me, a very quick way to spark that is remember why you started harp in the first place? Do you remember? Because oftentimes we forget as time goes on. So consider that. Then the next one is have a specific and compelling purpose. It's almost a mission that you're on that will drive things forward. And then the final one is to cultivate your self-trust. By cultivating your self-trust, you're actually more in touch with your purpose and more likely to follow through with it, and therefore show a lot more commitment. Now, in terms of growing self-trust, it's so crazy. I was doing a lot of research on this over the years, because it's one of the things that I teach is encouraging my students to cultivate self-trust, because it's one of the hallmarks of being creative and an artist. And the number one predictor of self-trust is who people surround themselves with. It's pretty incredible. It's very important that you are surrounding yourself with supportive people or people that understand what you're about. And if you are being surrounded by people who are not helping you build your self-trust, it would be time to do just a little bit of an audit on that and to also reach out to people.
That's a tricky one. I did have because I started harp living with two other musicians who totally appreciated it. I mean, one of them had perfect pitch. That's a whole nother story. I mean, we had 2 floors of lofts in Soho in New York. And I'd get up at 5 and tune the harp. And I'd hear the stomp, 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 stomp down the stairs. He'd come in and go, "It's that one," the string.
Oh, my God.
It would make him have nightmares if my harp wasn't in tune. He couldn't, it would just corrupt his sleep. But the point of this was, we were talking about,
the self-trust.
You can't, it's very nice to have supportive people, or at least people who don't complain that you're practicing. Really, my self-confidence, self-trust comes from practicing. And the other thing is memorizing. I mean, I like improvisation because
I'm a memorization fanatic.
You don't have a music stand. Okay. I mean, and in San Francisco, I mean, you never know. You might have a job outside, right? And there's just no way to keep a music stand up and pages on. And all the clip systems in the universe do not work in San Francisco and
I can testify.
High wind areas. So memorize. And, when I have something memorized and Mildred Dilling told me, you really don't know a piece, dear, until you can play it well enough with the harp, with the phone under your ear and you keep playing, or the doorbell rings, or somebody bumps into your harp, all of which have happened during performances, by the way, not the phone part. But when I worked at the Ritz-Carlton Fine Dining Room, I mean, waiters backed up into the harp. I mean, I'm playing this really amazing piece, and I'm ebony and gold, lion and Healy, style 23, and a waiter steps back and stands on the bass, and the harp goes twing.
No.
And I went, I just went with it and kept playing.
Oh my God.
We were on. And then we went back, and then was miracle later. But because
it's true. There are many ways to cultivate self-trust. And I do believe that, being prepared, as you say, and memorization are, they go together, are utterly key to that as well. So finding those ways, to generate that trust in yourself so that you know that you can rely on yourself.
I've never figured out how to turn pages and play the harp.
Impossible, right?
I don't. My budget never includes, people are not willing to pay to have a page turner come with me. And and what I like about the harp is the visual of the hands. I mean, that's what got me turned on by the harp, was seeing Anna Bouquet in the Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra. I was enraptured. I was 8 years old. I can actually remember the second. And I saw her, she was a Salzedo harpist and had this movement. Like, oh, wow. I couldn't hear her. Too many violins.
So the aesthetic of it really mattered a lot to you. The aesthetic, really drew you in for the harp.
Absolutely amazing. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what I think about, because of that, in my head, I've always thought that what people see when they, when they experience me playing harp, is I want them to see the hands, and if there's a system covering.
I know, it's in the worst possible place, isn't it? It really is. It couldn't be a worse place. Although some people I've seen now, they will actually play through the strings. They'll put the stand on the other side because it actually makes more sense in terms of where your neck is. But the thing is, of course, you're looking through strings.
Well, recently I was going, why am I such a bad sight reader? I asked myself. And I heard Mildred Dilling's voice say in my head, you know where the strings are, dear. You don't have to look at them. So I said, oh. And I didn't look at the strings, and I'm a great sight reader. It would drop because I take my eyes off the music.
Yeah.
That simple, not because I'm defective. I had this elaborate story for myself that because I took up harp as an adult and everybody in my age has been playing 20 years longer, and I must be defective, and you have to have done that as a child. I was coming up with the same stories. That, I'm not defective, and neither are any of you who are listening.
Oh,
Anything you want at this instrument, you just have to make the commitment of time.
yeah. Well, I think that is just the perfect note to wrap up on, Boris. This was just so beautiful. You are on point, on purpose. I love this. And
I adore you. I'm one of your big fans.
Oh, you're so sweet. Oh my goodness.
Mission in the world of harp. You're bringing us together. I mean, when have I? This is great. I can't wait to watch the next Harpist interview. And I have tremendous respect for every single person who's tuned in today, for where you're at and what you're doing. And I'll just tell you something else that Mildred said about never comparing yourself to another harpist. It'll stop you cold, and it did me, because I heard another harpist one day, and I went at the Ritz. I said, "Wow, you feel like such." No, yeah, I'll always be a beginner at the harp, and that's That's a good thing too.
It's a good thing, beginner's mind, right?
Yeah, but do not compare yourself. Wherever you're, Mildred said, always be at the peak of your game for where you're at. If your song is hot cross buns, and that was my repertoire once, make it hot cross buns that that's beautiful, that's melodic, that has a legato line,
Play it on purpose.
So you can make it a beautiful thing, and move on to the next, and people will be moved by hot cross buns. And anyway, that's all.
Oh, I love it. We could go on forever. Oh, yeah. I wish Boris could play us out. People are asking if you would play something. I don't know if your harp is in tune.
Thanks for asking. Listen to some recordings.
He's got 10 CDs, so definitely, go to iTunes, look up Boris Goldmund. And Anya's saying, thank you for your comments about learning harp later in life. As a former pianist, I've begun the harp in my 60s and have felt so intimidated and discouraged, especially listen to other high school, all-state players. It doesn't matter what they are. I would take Boris's advice.
Can I just say one quick thing about that?
Of course.
Mildred Dilling, I went to her lesson, and I took my life savings. I took all my retirement accounts and said, I'm investing it in the harp. And if I didn't, that's why I had to go on the street and play, because don't play, you don't eat. So there was, where were we on this? But you had to go to Mildred Dilling gave a monthly master class. And if you took lessons from Mildred, you had to go to the master class. So I went to the master class, my first one, and you played by competence level. So Mildred had me go first, and I'm sitting in a room of, 25 harpists, and they're all, the harpist for the Metropolitan Opera is wonderful. All these people I met were sitting down, and I'm the first up. I was terrified. And the song was Hot Cross Buns. Yeah. And Mildred did an extended version lesson with me, and it was just completely humbling. And then the next person who sat down was 7 years old, and she played this incredible piece. I think it was like a section from Baldur or something. And she was like a real prodigy harpist. And I was going, but I worked my way up, in where I was in the shuffle over time. And George Clooney recently said too, it's about looking or being the best at whatever age you're at. Don't say, I want to look like I'm 22, because if you're 23, you're never going to look like you're 22 again. Better yet, don't have an age at all and just be your best. Anyway.
Yes, 1,000 times. And we're getting the question, will this be available to view later? Yes, it will. You can look on the Virtual Harp Summit Facebook page. You can look on the Diana Rowan public page, as opposed to my personal profile. And Helen, it will also be in the Bright Knowledge Harp Circle, which is a closed group. Yes. So check out the amazing Boris Goldmund, borisgoldmund.com. You can see his name right there. Look for him on iTunes, be friends on Facebook. Absolutely inspiring guy. And I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Yeah.
Inspirational. because you're harpists, for crying out loud.
With the harpists, we get together. This is what we do. And just a few more comments are coming in. Carla, I played the guitar and bass for many years and discovered the harp later in life and found it was the instrument I needed to play that resonates with me and my soul.
Go, Carla.
Go, Carla. We love it. Okay,
Carla,
so
can I just ask Carla a favor?
Yeah.
Carla, will you please come up with a curriculum for harpists to be better bass players on the harp? Because I'm really just, I would like to become a really good. There's someone in Barcelona and on Facebook. I'm trying to remember his name, and forgive me for not remember your name. I will. But he played this piece in his left hand. His bass line, his bass accompaniment was so compelling, and I'm going, wow! I'd really like to learn to play bass so I could translate it on the harp. So hearing that there's a bass player who came to the harp. Show us the way.
Carla, show us the way.
Exercise process, anyway.
Super. Oh, she says, you bet I would love it. Yeah, Carla. Great. Well, we'll look forward to hearing about that. So yes, everybody, remember to download your workbook so you can start working through the 5 steps. Today we talked about the first step, which is purpose. And I think we had a great old time together. And some new collaborations happening. Carla, let's talk. Love it. Okay, everybody. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jenny, from Sydney, Australia.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, everybody. And we will see you again. Yeah. Thanks again, Boris. Super fun.
Thank you.
Yay. Bye for now.